Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast in partnership with Eliza Chat, where we explore real tools and stories for building mental strength in the modern world.
Welcome back to the Mental Fitness Podcast. So today we're going to talk about health and vitality, the third pillar of mental fitness. We often talk about mental health, mental fitness as it lives only in the mind. We tell people to think differently, manage stress better, push through hard seasons, while ignoring the physical foundation that makes emotional regulation and resilience possible in the first place.
In reality, your brain is part of your body, but the way you sleep, move, and fuel yourself directly shapes how you think, how you feel, and how you respond to life. In this episode, we're diving into the third pillar of mental fitness, health and vitality, not as lifestyle advice or fitness culture per se, but as the systems that regulate mood, stress tolerance, and mental resilience.
Because you cannot outthink poor sleep, right? You can't mindset your way out of exhaustion, and your mental fitness can only rise as high as that physical foundation that you build beneath it.
We try to solve mental problems with mental tools, and that might be okay for some things, but the mind does not operate independently from the body. In our society, the healthcare system and the mental health care system, they're totally separate. We might even have different insurance plans for them. I mean, we think about them differently. We have experts in different areas. But our minds and our bodies are so intertwined that we cannot talk about mental wellness and mental fitness without understanding how health and vitality and how the body is impacted and influences our mood and our feelings.
Yeah, and I hope this episode gives people some hope, actually, and small things they can do around their health and vitality, because a lot of times anxiety, irritability, low mood, those are often signals of physical imbalance, right? It doesn't, when you're feeling those things, it's not, you're not a personal, it's not a failure of yours, right? It might just be signals of physical imbalance.
Right. I like what you said at the beginning, Luke. You cannot outthink poor sleep. Mm-hmm. If you're sleep deprived or you're physically exhausted, there aren't really tools or exercises or thinking patterns or things you can do to resolve that. That's your body. That exhaustion is your body screaming to you that it needs sleep. And that's the only way to really be functioning mentally at your top, is to be well rested. Right. Your mental fitness can only rise as high as your physical foundation allows.
Yeah, no, the brain is part of the body, not separate from it, right? It's interesting how, in society we separate those two things, like mental health and physical health. But in reality, we've seen this a lot in our work, Dave, like every time it comes back to the foundational things in your health and your vitality, right? With one of the most research and evidence-based things, it's number one by far, is sleep.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sleep is not just the number one area of health and vitality. It's probably the number one area of all mental health and wellness. We talked to a medical doctor and asked his advice. What's the one thing people could do to improve their physical and mental health? He said sleep. Of course, we talked to a sleep psychologist. It's all about sleep. We talked to therapists. It's all about sleep. Lack of sleep will do more harm to our mental and emotional state on any given day than anything else. And a good rest will do more good for our mental state than anything else. So if you're regularly, and exhaustion is often confused with anxiety and other things. So if you're often irritable, anxious, poor mood, even feelings of depression, first thing you should do is evaluate, how are you sleeping? I would assume in most cases, likely not well. And good sleep by itself may not solve all those problems, but sleep by itself will do more good for those problems than any other thing you can do.
Yeah, it's so easy to see. Like if you could do one thing for your mental fitness, like you said, it would be changing your relationship with sleep, right? It regulates your emotions, your attention, your stress tolerance. You'll notice everyone can notice when you have a rough sleep or like you're sleep deprived, right? You're just much more irritable the next day. You're quick to react instead of respond, right? And you can't regulate emotions as much, right? So it's truly like active neurological repair that happens while you're sleeping. It's very, very important.
Yeah, and we have a great episode on repairing your relationship with sleep where we learned some great insights and new perspectives on sleep from Dr. Jade Wu. We actually, because that episode was very popular and we got a lot of positive feedback from it, we have a follow-up episode with Dr. Wu coming up where we're going to dive into some more sleep hygiene things, which will be more practical tips of things we can do to improve our sleep. So we're not going to go into as many details on sleep right now as we will in that upcoming episode or in that past episode. But if this is some area that you feel needs to improve, we encourage you to listen to those other episodes.
So sleep is key. I think that's foundational. Another area is movement, right? So movement is mood regulation. It's not, fitness achievement, right? This doesn't mean you need to go sign up for CrossFit and do some crazy high intensity stuff every day, or once a week you go do 4 hours of high intensity workout. It's much more simple than that, right? Like could be simply walking after a meal for 10 minutes, or I know you do this actually, Dave. You've told me you sometimes just go on walks outside.
Yeah, I try to exercise regularly as part of my fitness goal, but separate from that more vigorous exercise. I have a practice, a goal of going on a walk every evening. And that walk is a time to reflect. It really is so helpful. It's a walk after dinner is, by the way, just super healthy in terms of regulating your glucose levels, the insulin levels. It's a very healthy practice, but it's more than anything else. It's where I get my emotional recovery from the day is going on a walk. It's most often with my wife, but even when she's unavailable, we have a busy household, or if I'm traveling, I'm out of town, then I walk by myself. And what's interesting, just to comment on thing, there was the one study found that every major increase in physical activity, that might be replacing sitting with a brisk walk or more vigorous exercise, but anytime we have a major increase in physical activity, there's a 26% decreased odd of developing depression.
It makes sense that there's just countless numbers of literature and research on this area, right? Movement, what you're saying makes sense because movement alters the brain neurochemistry, right? It literally reduces the stress hormones and cortisol, and it increases all those mood elevating or feel good chemicals in your brain, right? So it makes sense why movement and activity can make you feel better quickly, even if it's just a short bout of movement.
Like you said at the beginning, I'm glad that you said that. This is not becoming, some elite athlete or doing some intense training. This is not about weight loss. This is not about optimal physical fitness. This is simply about having regular movement in your life, purely from the standpoint of improving your emotional, mental well-being. But the study, there's so much data on this, decreased anxiety, like you just mentioned, reducing stress hormones, reducing risk of depression, all of these things. We are meant to move, and yet we live in a modern society where many, if not most of us, make our living and do our daily work while sitting in a chair. And so what we have to be intentional about building movement and exercise into our daily routine. But it's so good. It's so important for us in so many ways.
So there's sleep, there's movement. I think the next key area in health and vitality is nutrition for your brain chemistry, right? And how what you eat truly does influence your mood, your focus, your emotional regulation, right? What you eat is literally the raw material your brain uses to regulate those things, your mood, your focus, your stress, right?
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me was when I learned that, protein builds muscles and carbohydrates give you energy, but most nutrients, vitamins and things are feeding the brain. Your brain is an enormous consumer of nutrients. And so if you think about it that way, if you think about the nutrients are feeding your brain as much or if not more than your body, and that for me, just understanding that and that visualization of most of what I'm eating is going to my brain, that made me think a little differently about getting McDonald's versus going home and eating an apple or a carrot or something. I'm just thinking
that's true.
I'm feeding my brain, like the most important part of our body. But it's important that if we are malnourished, and malnourished not mean just in quantity, we can be eating a lot of quantity of junk, but if we're not getting healthy nutrients and our brain doesn't have the nutrients it needs to operate properly, we won't feel well. We won't be managing stress well. We won't be able to regulate our mood and stress, and because our brain needs those raw materials.
I think that's a good reframe and something I've tried to focus on with my relationship with food and it helps with those decisions, right? Am I going to go to McDonald's? More maybe something healthier is seeing food as fuel, right? Your brain is one of the most energy demanding organs in your entire body, right? So it relies on steady fuel and specific nutrients, like you said, to function well. So it's not necessarily about discipline, right? But think about it as fuel for your brain chemistry, right? And this can be hard. I mean, just like technology and all those issues we've talked about on previous episodes, the food industry is also wild as far as, so anything that's convenient and easy to grab from a high level, and I'm overgeneralizing a bit here, but it's usually like highly processed foods that can cause rapid blood sugar spikes, and then with that comes big crashes, right? So a lot of times, even those feelings of irritability or fatigue or anxiety, that, take a look at what you're fueling your body with. It might be as simple as eating more, just better foods, right? Whole foods and such, and see if you start feeling better.
That was a big one for me in a lot of the research that we've read is, we might understand the physiology of you eating, processed foods or sugary foods, and you have this insulin spike. And then when you come off of that sugar high, but what was interesting is that crash, which is totally physiological, it's based on what we ate. It can feel like anxiety, irritability, even depression. We are feeling emotions as we come off of that high and we have that crash, which is nothing to do with the things happening in our life that might be affecting our emotions, like, how we're feeling about things, what, we've been able to accomplish, what's going on with our loved ones or other things, but simply based on our eating patterns, our emotions are in this wide swing. And I didn't initially appreciate how much nutrition affected emotional until we started reading some of these studies, and I started to sort of observe it in myself and realize, you might feel really good when you eat all that stuff. But then when you come off of that sugar crash, it's not just physically tiring. You can sometimes start feel sad. Just not because there's any reason to feel sad other than your body's just going through a change based purely on how you eat.
That's true. And a lot of nutritionists and dietitians we've talked to, they talk about, you said a key thing, you observe how you feel when you eat certain things. They call it intuitive eating, right? So even if it's just as simple as that, after you eat, watch how you feel over the next couple hours. If you're crashing, it could be as simple as just changing your fuel for your body, right? So another thing is sustainability is something I've seen help. There's no perfect diet. You don't need to do some crazy extremes, right? You just need to find something sustainable and consistent. I think consistency is probably, across all these areas, the most important thing that we've talked about is just find something consistent.
One thing that's been helpful for me, and I just admit it, I love fast food. I try to avoid it. I know it's not healthy, but I love it. And of the 3 areas of health and vitality, I think that this is my biggest weakness of everything in mental fitness. Nutrition is probably my biggest weakness because I have a taste for some of the stuff that I know is not good for my body. But what I've been trying to do, instead of just trying to reprogram myself to not do that stuff, is making sure I eat more good things. So an apple a day keeps the doctor away. I just recently started buying apples, and I eat an apple every single day. And I just think I may not be able to immediately cure my desire for unhealthy food, but if I fill my fridge and my cupboards with healthy food, and I make sure that I have a minimum amount, I try to eat a minimum amount of fruits and vegetables and other like healthy foods, high protein foods every day. And by doing that, I literally crowd out space for the unhealthy stuff. And sometimes I still eat that, from time to time, but I'm also getting healthy food. So that's just for one fast food junkie to another, if there's any fast food junkies, filling your cupboards and fridge with healthy food and increasing the amount of healthy food you consume will naturally push out the other stuff. All right, this show is all about mental fitness, and here's something most of us don't admit. Everyone has those moments when you feel overwhelmed, stuck, or unsure, and what's actually going on in your head. That's why we built New. New is a mental fitness platform designed to help you clear your thoughts, reflect, notice patterns, develop habits, and get support that fits who you are. It remembers your goals, your wins, the things you're working on, and helps you stay on track. Not therapy, not toxic positivity, just real support when you need it. If you want to be part of the early access group, head to talkwithnew.com. That's talkwithnue.com. Sign up now and get 3 months free.
There's probably 3 simple upgrades that are really simple. Eat protein regularly is one. Protein really helps regulate your blood glucose spikes in itself. So maybe, try eating protein in the morning, adding that to your breakfast, right? Like you said, eat more whole foods than processed foods, and then eat consistently. Do not skip meals. That also affects your blood glucose levels and your crashes and such. And
combining movement and nutrition together, whatever your biggest meal of the day is, whether it's lunch or dinner, maybe it's breakfast, but whatever your biggest meal of the day is, plan a walk after that meal. And that will do a lot for helping you process that insulin spike as well as regulate emotion.
So small improvements, right? Small improvements stabilize mood faster than any drastic changes. And remember, you're not, weak if you're feeling these things. Your brain is likely just underfueled.
Yeah, so just kind of summarizing those 3 points, making something small in each of these areas, not seeking for perfection or drastic change, is going to be more effective. So for sleeping, maybe consistent wake time is probably the best thing. I think our sleep psychologist, Dr. Jade Wu, she's talked about that. Consistent wake time is probably the single best thing you can do for sleep. Daily movement of some kind. Just start with a walk or something, and then treating food as fuel and reducing, not necessarily fully eliminating, but reducing processed foods and increasing healthy natural foods. Not necessarily rigid diets.
Yeah, I love that. Across all these areas, like you said, sleep, movement, nutrition, consistency beats intensity every time, right? So your nervous system responds to patterns, not promises. And we have, New Year's is coming up. Typically people, a lot of times make pretty big goals and drastic changes and big promises, right? But at the end of the day, small, consistent things beat drastic changes in all these areas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's the gyms are packed in the month of January, but by February they're back to normal levels. And that's probably a lot of people taking on big audacious movement and exercise goals. And better is just if you just add that daily walk or that one little thing, but you're doing it 365 days, that's better than an intense workout program for the month of January.
Yeah, so true. So this episode kind of rounds out this mental fitness series, right? These 3 pillars we've discussed: self-awareness, connection to self, connection to others, and now in this episode, health and vitality. The cool thing is health and vitality, all these pillars are intertwined, and health and vitality specifically makes the previous 2 pillars we talked about more possible, right? Self-awareness is much harder when you're exhausted. Connection to others suffers when you're depleted.
Think about parents being short-tempered with their children is usually when they're tired, or when we're unhappy with ourselves. Yeah, it's when we're tired. Health and vitality, they're not selfish. It's not selfish to schedule that longer sleep or that time to exercise or that healthy eating. That's probably, when we're thinking of connection to others, the most unselfish thing we can be doing, because we're better friends and family members and loved ones to others when we are our best self.
So to tie this together, and even again tying all these 3 pillars together: awareness creates choice, connection creates resilience, and health, like you just talked about, Dave, creates capacity.
A challenge for this week: 1 consistent bedtime change, whether that's time that you're going to do it or putting the phone down at a certain time. 1 small thing related to sleep. 1 daily movement habit, just something to increase your movement each day. And 1 nutrition upgrade, simple as maybe an apple a day or a cheeseburger less a day, whatever it is. One simple nutrition upgrade.
And maybe to wrap up, we'll just say, mental fitness is not about doing more, right? It's about supporting these foundational areas and this system that carries you through life, right? That's what mental fitness is.
Well said. And thank you for listening. And please share this episode with those that you think can benefit from learning more about health and vitality in their life, and add a comment to maybe in one of those challenges for the week. What's one thing you've done from a sleep standpoint, a movement standpoint, or nutrition standpoint? Just add a comment. And thank you for listening.